Welcome to the scoop. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Farah.
All right.
We're like, that's it. Okay.
Look at that.
So, so welcome. And what are we talking about today, Nicole?
So today we're talking about how to receive feedback. And we're referencing an article. I probably will butcher names, but by Ehrlich, Nosiak, Carr, and Wine.
Awesome.
Did I get it?
Yeah,
Maybe.
that's what
Sorry
I
if
would
I
have
butchered
said.
anybody's name. Um, but anyways, it's an article from the Journal of Organizational Behavior Management on receiving feedback. And so we kind of want to like talk about the study, and I would love to replicate this to some capacity within the organization. So that's
Yeah, can I comment on that? Because I
yeah.
agree, it's great. I had read through some of this for we do these podcasts too for our staff. So we can reference and have them watch and kind of get have an education on some subject. So one of the things that happened with and the reason why this came up was because of one of these mentor groups that I do for our accreditation. And so Nicole is in school just finishing up her PhD. And so she was able to grab this and I was able to briefly go through it and go over one of our, I do once a month, Fridays with Farah with our staff. And so I did kind of a quick, like easy, this is how I want you to start to receive feedback. And they get to go into a, um, pool that will be a PTO day will be picked. So we started with just a simple phrase, and this is we can go over the study because it obviously goes into much more detail, and this was kind of on the fly. But just even sitting down and starting their session with, I'm excited to receive feedback. Let's talk about this, and just starting with the opening of the ready to receive feedback. The reason this was kind of brought up is it's the opposite of what all the studies are done. And I was in this mentor group talking about how it's hard for especially new leadership, but also seasoned leadership to constantly give feedback because, it can be difficult sometimes depending on how somebody responds. And so another person in this cluster mentor group was like, have you ever thought of, training and preparing and actually how the person takes the feedback and starts with that? So that's how this kind of came about. And he referenced this article that Nicole was able to find and print off. And it's not researched. This is like, well, I think, according to the article, one of the first, right? It's like a preliminary beginning, is what my understanding is, because everything's
Yeah.
done on the supervisors and how they give feedback, right?
Yeah, and it was published in 2020. So I did not research like articles um like after that 2020 if more of them came out or not. But according to the study done in 2020, it does state that like this is the first time research has been done on receiving feedback. There's a lot of research about how to give feedback.
In fact, that's what it's saying in here is this is like they call it teaching employees how to receive feedback, a preliminary investigation. So it's just beginning, and they give, of course, suggestions and ways to follow up on this. So we'll go into detail with that. But I thought it was fascinating, and when you read through here on how how it's so studied to how do you supervise, how do you give feedback, and how it hasn't been reversed. So it was really an aha moment of like, yeah, that makes sense because this supervise. One of the things that we did on Friday too during the call was because we do NVC, so nonviolent communication. We've talked about that many times on our podcast, is um, really like that empathy piece. And one of the things that I thought would be interesting to see is who can give empathy to their supervisors and how that must feel to be in that position. Admin too, I mean, even James, who is our HR person, it's very interesting when he's doing something and he's the one that's kind of got to deliver all the news, right? He's definitely, if not leading that meeting, definitely a part of those meetings. So that was interesting to read some of the empathy that was given to him too. And then even when we've had some tough conversations with James, when I've witnessed some other leadership say to James, for example, like, how are you doing? That must have been really hard to do that. Or like how, so it kind of was an aha moment. So it really ties in, Nicole, in my opinion, with NVC, empathy, how we begin and how we could begin on the other side. So I mean, I love when we do this because we kind of brainstorm and we talk about like what we can do. And so I would love to really, since you were saying, I would love to implement this and make it like more formal, I think is what you were saying, right?
Mm.
Kind of
Yeah.
like something.
Hmm.
Why don't we take what we did, what I had just originally started and make it more formal of like, this is how we're going to begin our sessions for like maybe February, March, like quarter 1. So we can talk about that more, but do you like that idea? Do you think that would be a
Yeah.
cool, since it's kind of and I can still put it into the pot and pull some PTO and that kind of stuff to make it more motivating.
Hmm.
Um, but anyway, we can go back to this, but I just think this is fascinating. I can't believe I've never even thought about that. It's like the reverse because we're usually out of the box thinker, or we are out of the box thinker. So I'm surprised, like, or maybe you have. I have never thought of this. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know why.
I I haven't either. And the article talks about this too, is that um we are in a field that gives a lot of feedback, both like positive, constructive, for learning, etc., growth. Um, However, when we give so much feedback and feedback is not received, then you don't want to give feedback any longer. So you kind of go to like a default setting of like maybe um like either fighting that or fleeing from that or fawning from that, from giving any sort of feedback because it's not being received. And we've also talked a lot about like bi-directional feedback, and
Yeah.
like that back and forth and that like supervisor supervisee relationship. So it was really fascinating to like see um how they did this, because as I was reading it, I'm like, wow, this is so simple.
It's so
And yet,
simple.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
that's why we didn't think of it.
maybe, yeah, because I'm like, wow, yeah, they really like operationally defined like what it means to receive feedback, and um yeah, I'm almost shocked it's never been
Yeah,
considered.
I feel kind of silly because when he said that, I was kind of the mentor guy. I was I was like, oh come on, we've had to have been, thinking about this. And I'm like, I don't even think it was even a thought. Yeah, it was the bi-directional that we've always said the back and the forth, but we never really taught the other side with the receiving of it. So I'm like, that's so interesting. Um, so yeah, I do think it's super interesting. In fact, when you had said, people will turn to the default and then stop giving the feedback, it also states in this article, I was just looking, I'm trying to see which part of this was, but it was saying that when you do give feedback, and it kind of reminded me of like a PIP, or it's a perform yeah, it was a PIP, and then that the person receiving the feedback gets mad, shuts down, and actually does the reverse of what you want to do, which we say it goes one way or the other. So where we're trying to make performance improvement plans not be more positive, but it does have a negative connotation. So it does go over that in here. Let me see, trying to find it, but it does say how it becomes. They didn't use the word adversive, but the
I think
positive.
they kind of did though, because it's
Did they?
talking about yeah, like providing corrective feedback was like aversive, so the employee
Oh
behavior,
yeah, it does. Okay,
yeah, becomes like non-receptive to feedback.
which makes sense because they don't
Hmm.
know how to take the feedback.
Hmm. And then
So
it
that
actually
was
hinders growth.
Yeah. So I'm like, well, we know that already. We've talked about that many times of how do we make so like this really is like a full like it was an aha moment because of that because we already know that and we literally see people it splits right there. You know it's going to go very bad or if people are going to go, "Oh, I got to get on the okay, yeah. I'm gonna own this and be accountable," but we know that that's very difficult too. Based off of a bunch of things. So that was
You just made me think of something though, is that this is so important too, because sometimes I have individuals who are like, give me feedback. But then and then I do, and it's challenging to hear the feedback. So it's like, it seems like initially the feedback is like motivating for the employee. However, if you can't receive whatever feedback is provided, then it's not motivating for you to receive it, if that makes sense.
yeah, it does. Because that's happening too, for sure, is the request. So a good example of that, and I think this is a good part for our staff to hear, is that I mean, over the years, but the last year, we've really taken surveys and feedback, verbally, written, you name it, during evaluations, whatever you want to, say. We've made these levels for everybody because the biggest thing is they want predictability, they want transparency, they want equality, they want all of the, those are some big ones, right? Some ease so they can see those. So we did that and this is how we can do it. This is how we can pay more is that we have to have consistency in this area. We need the company needs more flexibility. We need more partnership and balance. All of these things we have really deeply in the last year, but it's been 2 or 3 years, but really, really, and then you get a bunch of pushback. Oh, I don't like this. I don't. So that's what I think you're talking about, right? Is like you get the feedback. It is essentially saying, okay, this is all your feedback. We're going to be super transparent. This is what's happening. We even talked about it for the last quarter last year up until the first. I did it on Fridays with Farah. You did it. We've talked, and then it was like complete shock. Oh my gosh, this is, and not everybody. Some people were very at ease and very excited, but then you have another part that is like, so it kind of is like that's what that reminds me of is we were so excited because we were hitting all the areas. And again, we knew that there'd be some like questions and like we had to work through some things. Of course, we know that. But then it's like, wow, like this is too much, or oh, that's not the way I was envisioning it. I'm not sure. But is that what you're kind of talking about with that? Would that fit
I
there?
think that's like the most recent piece is like, yeah, we took all those needs and it made this pathway. I think that any organizational adjustment or like change is kind of like the swear word a little bit. And so like I kind of want to dive into like why is that, you know? Because there was preparation, there was feedback gathered in order to make the
Mhm.
levels, and it was based off of the majority of staff like feedback as well. So um I do know that on an individual level it affects each person differently, and we knew
Sure.
that there would be some individuals who it didn't fit their need, um but overall, like how do we get that like stigma of like change to away?
Yeah, I think that's why we did the levels is so that there would be consistency and less feeling of change. I think the need that we most often heard was predictability, knowing like ahead of time, transparency and that ease. And I think that this will bring it. So I
Yeah.
think beginning parts are always difficult because I think the one thing that we've heard for years is the things that stick out in my head at least are change. There's so much change.
Mhm.
Um, and that's because of the strategies to keep changing. So we wanted to lay out the levels to show that this is what it is. The equitable access is really more of the strategy if you're having a difficult time, right? That's how I look at it. So if you and I have different it's might be the same need, but the way that we get there, that's our pathways for our leadership, might look a little different because I might need to work on, I mean, maybe it's me receiving feedback, and maybe for you, Nicole, it's something completely different. Maybe you're great at receiving feedback and I'm not. So maybe those are two different strategies that we're working on the same goal to get to the end point. Maybe we're looking to be assistant directors or a RBT or a director or, fill in the blank. That looks a little different. That's how I look at equitable access, as our paths look a little bit different to get there. It's still merit based. I think that that's also a big misconception, is that equitable access means you can get there without having those checkpoints. Though it's still merit. You still have to have a degree to be in certain positions. You still have to, pass a test to be an RBT. You still have to have a high school diploma to be a tech. Like there's still those things, and that's where the equitable access, we look at it, is like it might just look a little bit different of how you do that. So I think that's important to state too, is we're still merit based. We're still very much, you've got to hit these things. Right? Would you agree with that? And I think,
Yeah, I think we just structured what that means for people. Like, what does it mean for this merit-based type of pay structure? Because that was a lot of the feedback that we got is like, well, if it's merit-based, like how, like, is it different for this person versus this person? And so we kind of laid that out, that like equitable access piece of like, this is everything that like we're kind of looking at as far as like goal development and growth in order to meet this like pay range, etc.
yeah, because I mean, pay is a big one, right? They want transparency. This person just came in and they make this, or this person does this. So, of course, we're going to be working through this as we move through, because that's how we're growth mindset, right? So we can look at some feedback and look at it and say, oh, like we just did last week. Um, and say, okay, yeah, I can see why we need to do something a little different with this. We're going to add this to one of the levels. And I'm sure we'll do more as time goes on. And I think at the end, our overall arching goal will be met, just like it was the year before with unpaid time off and what that looks like. We made that more consistent,
Mm-hmm.
um, which we saw a huge increase in staff, in people staying, and just transparency with that. So it's really nice to have um, consistency with that and have results that actually reflect our consistency and that we kept it the same. So I think the initial Band-Aid being pulled off is difficult, but again, it still does point back to, are you able, it reminds me of accountability. How are you accountable? This
Mm-hmm.
would be a way to measure our value of accountability, right? With target behaviors. So let's talk about that, because I think we can kind of direct back to the 8 target behaviors. What do you think about their study with that?
I loved their target behaviors. The only thing that I can see is like some like cultural pieces come into play when it relates to like eye contact.
Right.
But let me take like yeah, let me take like a step back though. So basically what they did was um they had these 8 target behaviors that the participant had to complete when receiving feedback. So when they were receiving feedback, they had to be prepared. So they had to come with like a notebook to take notes, eye contact, follow-up questions, so asking follow-up questions, acknowledging mistakes, so that's kind of like our accountability, so saying things like I see, oh, okay, things like that. Active listening, which is part of our empathy pieces.
Love
So
that.
summarizing, paraphrasing. Um, they have to commit to a behavior change. So committed actions is what I'm seeing here. So they've accepted the feedback and express a willingness to use it. A appreciation statement. So saying, gosh, that was really helpful. Things of that nature. and then overall demeanor. So they had a friendly tone, smiling, expressing interest, maintaining upright, respectful posture. Um, so they took all these and they put it on a point value. So like one was that they did it and they put criteria for each point value. A half a point was they did some, and then zero, they didn't do it at all.
I love
So
it.
yeah, I really, really like I really, really like it.
I do
And like
too.
I said, the only thing for me that stands out is like the eye contact. Like I don't I give eye contact when people are talking to me, but when I'm talking, I tend to have eye contact elsewhere. And then but that doesn't mean I'm not listening, or I don't care or I'm not like receiving.
We've talked about that a lot actually. Uh, because I do too. Like because I'm thinking. So I look away when I'm talking a lot because I'm picturing it in my head and thinking about like I'm kind of like recalling. Like I am now. I'm like recalling. So I do think that's a tricky one. So what are your thoughts? You like all the rest of them though? Do you think all the rest of them kind of hit a replicable way of doing things for us? Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so what would you replace that or what would you do with that?
I don't know. I mean, we could also define it a little bit better because like not better, but just differently. So like one is that the employee maintains eye contact when listening to the feedback. But what if they're like writing down the feedback and not like looking at the person? Because the one before that is preparation, so like having some sort of like notes or, you know, I mean, maybe
Could we just take one of our NVCs, which would be being present, um, and define how we're doing that? Because that's really what we're
yeah,
working on is being present. So maybe replace it with that because eye contact is one part of being present for many people.
yeah.
I know I've really worked hard on that. It's people that I'm supervising too, it's goal. So what does that look like for that individual, maybe?
Yeah,
Um,
I really like that. Yeah.
so okay, I love it. I think it's great. I just still am shocked that we've never like just talked about this somehow. It just shocks me because
Mhm.
it's so simple, but I'm very excited. Okay. So then what you're saying, and just for anybody else that listens to our podcast, again, we do this also for training within the company. It's also acknowledgement of we really like to go back to the basics of like why is ABA? And this is so simple and have already been researched. So this is why we love ABA, right? Because we take a study and we replicate it. So Nicole, would you like to do all of this and then just number two would be presence then?
Yeah, I would love that. And we can definitely define presence and what that looks like.
Okay, love it. That is so exciting. Okay.
And they used very basic, like they used behavior skills training to like teach these concepts. That was their intervention, which we use all the time. That's kind of like our model try feedback methods. Um, but they did like a PowerPoint presentation as like a whole group that contained the information. And then they broke it down into video models, and then they would watch themselves, and they would learn the targeted behaviors based off of like video modeling. They would get like direct like training and practice. And then they had like a follow-up training session after that. But very, very basic standard like ABA practices were used to teach it too, which, yeah, like I was reading it and kind of like, duh, like, yeah, you would do that?
I know that's what I mean. I'm like, that's exactly how I felt. Like, duh.
Mhm.
Like it's just so simple. I mean, we are doing a lot of this, but again, like yeah, so this is great. I'm very excited. And some of the recommendations. I also reminded me, you know how it was talking about emails,
Yeah. Hmm.
and it reminded me of you, what you did for your research with the texting, right? Was it, didn't you do texting or something?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, providing reinforcement through texting, which yes, it is feedback, right? Through text message.
So I thought, how cool is that?
Mhm.
Like you've already done some of this, and because I stepped in the middle of it sometimes, and you said, Farah, I'm in the middle of my research. Back up. I was like, oh boy, sorry. So yeah, I thought yeah, it's just like such an aha moment. So okay, let me see here. So that I wanted to just mention that with your research because you've already kind of been doing some of this, with like the prompting and the reinforcement and that kind of stuff. And then it also gave me ideas just in general. Obviously, we'll do this and we'll figure out how we want to kind of get that out there to measure it. We can tie this into what happened on Friday because I think that that would be good since I've already laid that and give more specifics. And then this made me think about CR messaging too and how we pull in messages from CR because that also can be a struggle. And we constantly talk about people need to be reading it and doing it, and that's how we respond. So that was something that with the mentors at least, I'm always trying to tie in with you got to check your CR messages to get what I'm asking you to do to be able to get your feedback and your goals and everything through CR or the information, I guess I would say. So, how can we tie that in to increase that, right? So I thought that was cool too, is just how we tie in some of this to increase other areas.
Oh.
Um, right?
Hmm.
Just incidentally in here because we constantly talk about that.
Hmm.
So what are your thoughts
There's
on
a
that?
lot that we can do, and like written language has that permanent product to
Yeah.
it too. So we could even tie in like when they talk about preparation, like maybe the preparation is acknowledging an email or responding to that.
Hmm.
Yeah, or knowing what's in the email would be probably the first step.
Well, and I love what you do. I don't know if you're the only one that's doing this. I think you for sure do this, but how you will say like what's your favorite restaurant or what's your favorite food or color or something in an email so you know because they responded, right? With their
Yeah.
favorite. And it really does, I have to say, too, it really does make you go, what's going on when somebody does respond? You know what I mean? Why are they writing Burger King? I'm just making it up, and then you like really pay attention because you're like, I don't want to be left out. So
Mhm.
it's very effective, actually. So
Yeah,
that
and, I did that to build rapport too, because then I could, yeah. Like one time I asked, yeah, the favorite restaurants because I really wanted some new restaurant ideas, but then,
go to a new restaurant. No, I think it's great. There's so many things you can tie into all of this to make it fun and make it and get information that we're looking for using emails, not just the messages in central reach but the emails too, like that's something that we have that I don't remember how many there were but quite a few of they haven't even looked in their email. And I get that there's two, email and central reach, but we do use both. So we do need people because there's some things we can't do in CR that we can do in Google, for example. That is pretty vital. So we need that to be occurring as well. So I think there's a lot of things we can definitely tie in here, and it's very exciting. It was really fun to read through here, and I read through certain parts twice because you think of things and then you pull it back to what you can actually do. And I knew you were going to say, we got to do this. So I was excited to brainstorm on here too. We use this as kind of like a meeting, guys.
yeah.
So yeah, so what else do you want to talk about on here? Or is there anything you can add
I
to that?
mean, results of this study are like pretty incredible. So they had three participants, um, and in from baseline to intervention, they increased pretty
100,
dramatically.
yeah,
So
I think it's, well, I think it's a 156% increase from baseline
yeah.
for the
And
first
like
one.
yeah, the first one, and then it was like a 30 increase from baseline, and then like a 42% increase from baseline. Um, and they had 2 week follow-up sessions as well for to like maintain that skill. And those percentages were even higher than when they ended in
Wow.
pension. So it maintained over that time period too, which is super cool.
That's
And it's
very
so
cool.
simple, so I'm ready to do it.
All right. So everybody, we will have something more formal and specific with the stuff that we talked about last week to follow up because I still want to tie that into the to reinforcement. Are you okay with that, Nicole?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. To reinforcement. It's also I just want to mention is can you see me or did we freeze?
No, I can see you.
Okay. I think you froze for me. Like I said, I'm having some issues here. But anyway, it will be cool to tie that in. And but it's also going to just help with the connection that we constantly talk about and the reinforcement and the tube of connection that we talk about in NBC of that back and forth feedback. This will help with getting our supervisors, even supervisors that are newer to the field too, or just struggling in general with, it's tough. I mean, Nicole and I talk along with a couple other leadership. It's pretty lonely the more you supervise and kind of go up, in your career because we do want to maintain professionalism and not, you can only vent to certain, it's only appropriate to vent or to talk about certain things in the fields when you're struggling, even as a supervisor. So this will help, I think. My hope would be with this because it will again open that tube of connection is the way that I look at it. And my hope would be that more people will feel more comfortable as we move forward with this and with the training. So I'm excited. I hope this is really helpful for any of the staff that are getting feedback, which is all of us, right? We all take feedback and be able to talk about that as far as what we're needing and our feelings and kind of getting to those strategies that are effective. That's the way I look at it. We want to get to a strategy that works as much as we can for everybody, um, which I think is really good. And the results were really cool. So yeah, I think this is great. Anything else? It even had the purpose, like the purpose on here in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Again, was to develop a set of skills for individuals that to exhibit when receiving verbal feedback and then teach those skills using behavior skills training. So BST, which is our model try feedback. Yeah, it was just very, very, very exciting. And I'm very excited to follow up. Maybe we could do this and then follow up in a few months or a month or whatever is appropriate, probably 2 or 3 months. Um, but we could talk about how this is going and maybe some things that we'll continue to do and maybe change or add as we go
Mm-hmm.
through, because that's always the exciting part about ABA. Is this worked? I would suggest this. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. Well, I hope this was helpful. I think what we'll do then is we will put this together with the same 8 steps and come up with a couple of other things tied into the reinforcement. And then we'll let you guys know how that goes with the rollout. I know, gosh, we're always wanting to do more. We're always like, oh, we found something. This is what we're doing now. Yeah. So very exciting. Okay, so is that it, Nicole? Do you have anything else you want to add or finish with?
That's it.
That's it. All right. All right, guys. So till next time, we will see you in March. This is for our February Black History Month too. We'll have a big celebration with that. I'm excited to kind of go through that. And then we'll see you hopefully when it's getting warmer here in Wisconsin. So till next time, bye.